All right, guys, so here we go. There's a new psychopath who got elected in Argentina. His name is Javier Milei. He describes himself as an anarcho-capitalist, which of course means government should basically not exist except maybe to enforce contracts and have police. But outside of that, like public infrastructure, forget it. It needs to be privately owned. No regulation of the marketplace whatsoever. Just dog-eat-dog capitalism, like harsh, laissez-faire, unfettered capitalism. Well, anyway, now we learn this. President Javier Milei announces a total crackdown on Argentine civil society, calling on armed forces to break strikes, arrest protesters, protect children from families that bring them to demonstrations, and form a new national registry of all agitating organizations. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into this to see what's actually going on here. This is in Common Dreams. Milei couples total crackdown on protest with economic shocks in Argentina. Quote, protest is elemental to Argentine social and political life, so it's not difficult to imagine how this ends, said one journalist. As the human impact of Argentine President Javier Milei's shock treatment to the South American country's economy became increasingly clear with rising prices on Thursday, Security Minister Patricia Bullrich announced what one journalist said were doubtlessly preemptive new controls on protest to discourage a struggling population from speaking out. Bullrich said 4 security forces, the federal police, the gendarmerie, the naval prefecture, the airport security police will work together to stop protests that block streets, and suggested the protocol is aimed only at ensuring that people can live in peace without demonstrators blocking traffic. But as Progressive International Co-General Coordinator David Adler and others noted, the measures also include calls for armed forces to break labor strikes, create a national registry of people who organize protests, and sanctions against parents who bring their children to demonstrations. The new package amounts to a total crackdown on Argentine civil society. Bullrich's announcement came days after Milei, a far-right libertarian economist who has called the climate crisis a socialist lie and has been compared to former U.S. President Donald Trump. I don't think that's actually accurate enough to compare him to Trump. Trump's a little different. Announced, not saying better or worse, just saying literally objectively different. Announced in the first weeks of his presidency an economic shock treatment package, including a devaluation of the peso by 50% from 400 pesos to the US dollar to 820 pesos. The administration also said it would cut public spending by closing some government ministries, increasing retirements ordered by decree, reducing energy and transportation subsidies, and freezing public works, with further profound measures expected in the future. Milei claimed that with the spending cuts, government revenues will ultimately increase by 2.2 points, helping to confront an economic crisis in which annual inflation exceeds 160%. The country has a trade deficit of $43 billion, and $45 billion is owed to the International Monetary Fund. But as Milei's open-heart surgery of the economy, as El País called the package, took hold, prices of some goods and services rose by 100%, and some commuters worry that they will no longer be able to afford their daily commutes. If transit agencies are forced to raise prices due to lost subsidies. If the bus fare goes up, my salary will be spent on transport, Julia Gonzalez, who takes 3 buses and a train to her job in downtown Buenos Aires, told the Associated Press. About 40% of Argentinians live below the poverty line, and more than 9% are destitute, reported El País, with incomes insufficient to buy food. Economist Juan Manuel Telechia told the outlet that monthly inflation could reach 30 to 40% due to the devaluation, and the social aid will be highly insufficient. President spokesperson Manuel Adorni said of the economy Wednesday that Milei found a patient in intensive care about to die, but one trade unionist told El País that the president is exaggerating the inherited crisis situation to justify inadmissible measures, which increase poverty levels in Argentina above 50% in a matter of days. Wow. The mega devaluation that is being carried out is a matter of concern because it may devolve into hyperinflation. Now that's ironic because one of the core tenets of the hardcore Austrian economist types, the laissez-faire, unfettered capitalist types, the anarcho-capitalists, one of their core things is like, we need to prevent hyperinflation, and the way we do that is by slashing government spending everywhere. And in this scenario, it's like, by undertaking these same economic changes, it's actually helping to bring about hyperinflation. You can't have hyperinflation without, it's not just government spending, it's also without massive political instability. Like, you need that there in order to actually reach hyperinflation. And that appears to be what we're seeing. So anyway, this article goes on here, but, it's ironic, isn't it? Because anarcho-capitalists, they frame their whole worldview around this notion of freedom. Now, freedom on social issues, I actually totally agree with. You should be able to do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. I think that's a very basic and correct way to approach governance. But they also transfer that line of thought over into a capitalist system with property rights, where freedom is basically freedom for the business owner to get away with whatever they want to get away with and be as exploitative as they want to get away with. So it's like freedom in the social sense is good, but freedom in the capitalist economic sense is actually bad, because you're just giving a green light for exploitation of business owners against the working class, right? And so, but if you base your whole worldview economically and politically around freedom, and then you turn around and say, we're going to do a total big government crackdown on protests, well, you're not really all that pro-freedom now, are you? Because that's one of the core tenets of actual freedom, is being able to express disapproval with the government, being able to dissent, being able to organize, being able to have your voice heard, free speech, free expression. And for you to crack down militarily or with the police on protests and create a registry and go after parents who bring their kids there and all these different things, I hate to tell you, but you're kind of an authoritarian. And there's the main point right there. It's like, this is authoritarian what he's doing, but also I would argue his economic approach of anarcho-capitalism is also authoritarian. Why? Because libertarians and anarcho-capitalists seem to understand what exploitation looks like when the government does it. But for some reason, when a private business in a capitalist system does the exploitation, they don't view it as exploitation. They view it as like, what do you mean? That's just par for the course. That's just like the way it works. That's how contracts work. But it's like, contracts in that scenario, one party has all the power and the other has none, right? And so it's not two equal parties on an equal footing. And we've seen this play out in case law in the US with like the Lochner era, for example, where they said, you're cracking down on my freedom if you tell me, I can't make somebody work 80 hours a week, right? If you're telling me I'm not allowed to use child labor, you're cracking down on my freedom. The child freely decided to sign a contract with me and I'm paying them. What's the problem here? Don't crack down on my freedom. And so they really bastardize this notion of freedom. And here he gives away the game in the sense that they don't really believe in freedom. They're just, a better way to describe an anarcho-capitalist is a capitalist fundamentalist. That's what he is. And everything comes secondary to that, which means what? It really is a green light for the robber barons to be bigger robber barons. And so they're supposed to be all about social freedoms too. There are no social freedoms. They're cracking down on free speech and free protest. So much for freedom on that front. And on the economic front, you're really not free if your business owner can effectively be a dictator in your life, right? Everybody understands a dictator in the government sense, lording over you, is bad and wrong and anti-freedom and oppressive. But it's the same thing in a business context. That's why you need rules and regulations to rein in the power imbalance and to crack down on bad bosses. That's why you need unions to help balance out the power between worker and business owner, right? So much for that whole freedom thing. And by the way, these huge changes he's making to the economy of Argentina, oh man, they could be devastating. And there were a lot of people, we covered a video on this the other day from some news outlet where they talked to people who are like living on the social safety net in Argentina who are voting for Milei. And it's like, my dude, he's going to take away whatever income you have remaining. Like, he's telling you he's going to do that. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, it's like, if you just sound anti-establishment, if you just have like harsh rhetoric about the system, people will interpret that however they want to interpret that and say, I don't know, I think he's fighting for me. Why? Well, he sounds angry. Look at his tone. He's really mad at the system. And it's like, being anti-establishment isn't enough in and of itself. It's got to be like, in what way are you anti-establishment? How are you anti-establishment? Are you going to look out for the people, or are you just going to bring in the robber barons and let them run rampant? Because, he's to the right of the establishment in many ways. And that could be worse for the people. So we got to stop falling for just like these head fakes. Like if somebody just sounds anti-establishment or they sound angry or they use populist rhetoric, it's like, what are your actual policies? And in his case, it's like his policies are going to hurt the working class more. And unfortunately, many of the working class voters went for him anyway. So not good. But this crackdown on protests is sickening and massively authoritarian. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.